You think courage will save your kind. It won't, but it will force us to listen.
The chamber was built to intimidate. That much Ronan Hale understood within the first 3 seconds of stepping inside. The ceiling rose far higher than necessary, supported by dark metallic arches etched with unfamiliar sigils that pulsed faintly with amber light. The air carried a controlled stillness, not silence, but the absence of anything accidental. Every sound existed because it was allowed to. This was not a room designed for dialogue. It was designed for submission. Ronan adjusted his posture instinctively, hands clasped behind his back, breathing steady. He had stood in hostile rooms before, human courts, emergency councils, war briefings where the fate of entire colonies balanced on phrasing. Fear was not new to him, but this was different because she was already there. She stood at the far end of the chamber, waiting, tall, still, unmoving. Her presence didn't announce itself through motion but through gravity, like the room had subtly oriented itself around her without asking permission. Her skin was pale, almost luminous under the chamber lights. Her long silver blonde hair was pulled back with precise discipline, revealing the sharp, unmistakably non-human lines of her ears, elongated, elegant, angled slightly backward in what Ronan instinctively read as restraint rather than relaxation. Her armor was ceremonial, not battlefield gear, but it carried weight. Polished bronze and dark alloy interlocked in layered plates that caught the light without reflecting it fully. Ornate, purposeful, designed to suggest history, authority, and consequence. Her eyes met his. Green, not human green, too clear, too sharp, like cut crystal rather than pigment. They didn't widen, didn't blink. They assessed. Ronan felt the moment register in his chest before his mind could label it. Not attraction, not fear, evaluation. She was measuring him. Ambassador Ronan Hale, she said. Her voice was calm, controlled, smooth in a way that suggested she never raised it because she never needed to. You may approach. No welcome, no courtesy, just permission. Ronan walked forward alone, boots echoing once, twice, far louder than he liked in the vast chamber. He stopped at the indicated mark, exactly where the floor's geometric pattern subtly shifted, an invisible boundary disguised as decoration. He inclined his head. Not a bow, not defiance, balance. I am honored to meet you, he said, envoy of Earth and its allied systems. A pause, her gaze lingered on his face, then flicked, just briefly, to his hands, his shoulders, the micro-tension along his jaw. Interesting, she thought. He's hiding it well, not fearless, but disciplined. Aloud, she said, honor is a negotiable concept, titles are not. She stepped forward. The distance closed faster than Ronan expected. She stopped just outside his personal space, close enough that he could see the fine texture of her skin, the subtle warmth beneath the controlled exterior. Close enough that retreat would be noticeable. Velarith Diplomatic Authority, she continued. Senior strategist, arbiter of interstellar compliance. A beat, Aerith Kali's. The name settled into the chamber like a sealed door. Ronan held her gaze. I've studied your people's diplomatic history extensively. I know, Aerith replied. Her lips curved barely. Not a smile, something sharper. You cited my third treaty amendment in your preliminary transmission. Incorrectly, I might add. Ah, there it was, the opening strike. Ronan allowed himself a faint exhale, deliberately. That earned him something new, not surprise, attention. Aerith's eyes narrowed a fraction. Her ears shifted, angling forward almost imperceptibly. Explain, she said. If I had cited it correctly, Ronan continued calmly, you would have assumed I was relying on your precedent. By misquoting it, I signaled that I expect you to correct me, which means this conversation begins as a dialogue, not a lecture. Silence stretched. Inside, Aerith felt an unexpected flicker of amusement. Clever, risky, human. Outwardly, she remained unmoved. You presume much, she said. I negotiate for a species that survives by presuming, Ronan replied. Often in rooms built to make us forget that. Her gaze sharpened. For the first time since he entered, Ronan sensed a shift, not in power, but in interest. Aerith turned away, armor plates whispering softly as she moved. She gestured toward a seating structure that unfolded seamlessly from the chamber floor. "Sit," she said. Ronan obeyed. She did not. Instead, she circled him slowly, deliberate, controlled, predator-like but without hunger. This was inspection, not threat. "You are aware," Aerith said, "that your presence here places your species at considerable risk." "Yes. You are also aware that your proposal challenges established Velarith doctrine." "Yes. And yet you came alone." "Yes." She stopped in front of him again. "Why?" Ronan looked up at her, met her eyes without flinching. "Because if this ends badly," he said, "it should end with me, not with Earth." For half a second, half a dangerous, private second, Aerith's composure slipped. Just enough for her to feel it, not weakness, recognition. Brave, she thought. Or foolish. The line is thinner than humans realize. She straightened. "Your courage is noted," she said coolly. "It will not save you." Ronan nodded once. "I didn't expect it to." Aerith turned toward the chamber's far wall. The sigils flared brighter. "Then we may proceed," she said, with the illusion that this is a negotiation. Inside, beneath the cold precision and layered strategy, a quiet, traitorous thought surfaced in her mind. This one will be troublesome. And to her mild annoyance, she was already looking forward to it. The illusion shattered faster than Ronan expected. The second chamber was smaller, narrower, and deliberately asymmetrical. Nothing aligned perfectly. Walls angled inward at uneven degrees. The ceiling dipped low on one side, forcing subtle posture adjustments. It was the kind of space that exhausted the mind without ever touching the body. Aerith had chosen it on purpose. Ronan felt it immediately. Disorientation theater, he thought. Velarith classic. He followed her inside without comment. A single table occupied the center. No chairs this time. Just a flat surface of dark glass, its depth impossible to judge. Data glyphs shimmered faintly beneath it, drifting like slow currents under ice. Aerith stopped on her side of the table. Ronan mirrored her. "Before we begin," she said, "you should understand something about Velarith negotiations." "I'm listening." "We do not negotiate outcomes," Aerith continued. "We negotiate inevitabilities." Her eyes held his as she placed one slender hand on the table. The glyphs responded instantly, blooming into layered projections. Star maps, trade corridors, population clusters, human colonies, too many of them highlighted. Ronan felt his jaw tighten just slightly. "This," Aerith said calmly, "is the expansion curve of your species over the next 40 cycles." The projection shifted. Red markers bloomed across the map. Supply failures, political fractures, environmental collapse zones. "This," she added, "is the point at which Earth's coalition ceases to be strategically relevant." Ronan remained silent. Silence, he had learned, unsettled powerful minds far more effectively than outrage. Aerith continued regardless. "You came here to prevent this," she said. "You believe cooperation might alter trajectories that logic has already resolved." She tilted her head. "That belief is admirable." The word landed with surgical precision. Ronan inhaled slowly. "You're showing me a future you want me to fear." "I am showing you a future that will occur," Aerith corrected. "Fear is optional." She lifted her hand again. The projections shifted. Velarith fleets appeared across the map, not advancing. Waiting, positioned at critical junctions. "You see," she said, "we are prepared to intervene, to stabilize, to guide." Ronan's gaze hardened. At what cost? Aerith smiled, this time unmistakably. Control. There it was. The truth unveiled without hesitation. "You intend to place humanity under Velarith oversight," Ronan said. "Protective governance," Aerith replied. "Structured, efficient, and permanent." "Yes." Ronan leaned forward, resting his palms lightly on the table. "Then why invite a diplomat at all?" Aerith's eyes gleamed faintly. "Because," she said, "we prefer consent to conquest, even when the outcome is identical." The room seemed to narrow. Ronan felt the weight of it settle in his chest, not panic, not fear, but clarity. This was the real move, the one that mattered. She had already won. Every counter he could conceive collapsed under the same conclusion. Refusal meant extinction. Acceptance meant survival under another species' will. There was no leverage, no clever reframing, no escape clause. Aerith watched him closely. Now she thought, this is where he yields. Human diplomats always did. They argued, they moralized, they pleaded, and eventually they broke. Ronan straightened. His expression did not harden, it softened. Aerith blinked. That was not expected. If what you're showing me is accurate, Ronan said quietly, then humanity cannot defeat you. Correct. We cannot outmaneuver you. Correct. And we cannot survive without your intervention. Also correct. He nodded once as if confirming an internal equation. Aerith felt a familiar sense of completion begin to form. There it is, she thought. Acceptance. Ronan lifted his gaze. Then you should proceed without us. The projections froze. Aerith's expression remained composed, but something behind her eyes stilled. Explain, she said. If humanity survives only by surrendering its agency, Ronan continued, then the species that survives will no longer be human. You'll preserve our bodies, our infrastructure. He gestured toward the frozen map. But you'll erase the one trait that makes us dangerous. Aerith's eyes narrowed. Unpredictability. No, Ronan said, choice. She stepped closer. You are refusing, she said. No, Ronan replied evenly. I'm removing myself. Her ears angled forward sharply. You do not possess that authority. I do, Ronan said. I am the sole human signatory present. Any agreement extracted under coercion through my office becomes void under Earth Coalition statute. Aerith closed the distance between them. You think this saves your people. I think it condemns me, Ronan said, and buys them time. Her gaze sharpened. Time for what? For humans to decide, he said. Not for you to decide for us. Aerith stared at him. Slowly, something unfamiliar rippled beneath her control. This was not in her projections. This was not rational behavior. Human courage, she realized, was not loud. It did not threaten. It simply refused to move. You will be detained, she said, her voice colder now. Your presence has become obstructive. I assumed as much. You may be executed. I assumed that too. Aerith searched his face for fear. Found none, only resolve. It unsettled her more than defiance ever could. You believe you have lost, she said quietly. Yes, Ronan replied without hesitation. I believe I've done everything I can. That answer landed harder than any plea. Aerith turned away sharply. Escort the human envoy to holding, she commanded the chamber. The walls responded instantly. Energy restraints shimmered into place around Ronan's wrists. He did not resist. As the doors sealed behind him, Aerith remained alone, staring at the frozen projections. Victory, she told herself. This is victory, yet the word felt thin. Somewhere beneath strategy and certainty, an unwelcome thought surfaced. What if this is the moment we miscalculated the human variable? She dismissed it with practiced discipline. Emotion was irrelevant. And yet, for the first time in centuries, Aerith Kylie's was no longer entirely certain, who had just lost the negotiation. The holding cell was not meant to break him. That was the first thing Ronan realized. It was too clean for cruelty, too precise for intimidation. The walls curved inward slightly, smooth and faintly luminous, their color calibrated to prevent either comfort or distress. No shadows, no corners, no sense of time. Velarith restraint was not about pain. It was about removal of variables, of agency, of relevance. Ronan stood exactly where the containment field had positioned him, arms locked at his sides by invisible force. The restraints applied no pressure, yet allowed no movement, an elegant solution if one admired that sort of thing. He tested them once. They did not respond, so he stopped trying. Execution would not be immediate. Velarith systems valued process, review, consensus. His death would be clean, public, and instructional, a message. This is what happens when you refuse inevitability. Ronan closed his eyes briefly. If this worked, he would never see the outcome. That was the difference between courage and optimism. Courage did not expect reward. The chamber door opened without sound. Aerith Kylie's entered alone. Ronan did not turn his head. Not because he couldn't, but because he chose not to. She stopped a few steps inside, posture immaculate, hands folded behind her back. Her expression was perfectly neutral, the diplomatic mask she wore more convincingly than any armor. Yet something about her presence felt altered. "You are scheduled for tribunal assessment," Aerith said. "Your probability of execution exceeds 90%. "Efficient," Ronan replied. "I appreciate clarity." A pause. "You do not appear distressed," she observed. "I'm done bargaining," Ronan said. "That's usually when the fear stops." She studied him more closely now, eyes tracing his face, searching for cracks. Elevated pulse, micro tremors, chemical stress indicators. There were some, but not where she expected them. "You believe your sacrifice will influence your species," Aerith said. "No," Ronan replied. "I believe my silence will." That made her frown. "Explain." "If I begged, threatened, or negotiated," Ronan said calmly, "you'd categorize me as predictable. You'd model the reaction, counter it." He finally turned his head to look at her. "But if I simply disappear, you're left with uncertainty. Humans argue endlessly about martyrs, about meaning, about choice. That hesitation costs time." Aerith felt an unwelcome flicker of something dangerously close to admiration. Annoying. "You assume your absence matters," she said. "I assume you noticed," Ronan replied. Her lips pressed into a thin line. He was right, she had noticed. Worse, she had felt it, not emotionally, strategically. His refusal had forced her to rerun projections, to widen margins, to introduce instability where none should exist. Humans did this. They stepped into the machinery and jammed it with intention. "You misunderstand your position," Aerith said coolly. "You have already lost." "Yes," Ronan agreed. "That's why this works." She paced once across the chamber, armor whispering softly with each controlled step. "You believe you've ended the negotiation," she said. "In reality, you have only removed yourself from it. That was the goal." She stopped, slowly turned back to him. "There are larger forces at play than Velarith oversight," she said carefully. "Your species is not the central variable." Ronan's brow furrowed. "Then why am I here?" Aerith hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second, Ronan caught it. "Because something you're not telling me makes my choice inconvenient," he said quietly. Her gaze sharpened. "You presume insight you do not possess." "Then correct me," Ronan replied. "Before I die ignorant." Silence stretched. Inside Aerith's mind, competing protocols collided. Reveal nothing. Maintain strategic opacity. Preserve outcome certainty. And beneath them, buried deeper than she liked, a thought she had not authorized. "He deserves to know." "You would act if you knew," she said finally. "Yes. Even now. Especially now." Aerith turned away. "This conversation is inappropriate," she said. "That hasn't stopped you yet," Ronan replied. Against her will, a dry, almost invisible amusement surfaced in her thoughts. Insufferable. She faced him again. "You believe you are alone in this chamber," she said. "That your fate rests solely on Velarith judgment." Ronan held her gaze. "You're about to tell me that's not true." She did not answer immediately, because the truth was dangerous, because speaking it would shift the balance irrevocably, and because for the first time in her career, she was no longer certain which outcome she wanted to protect. "You humans," Aerith said quietly, "have an unsettling habit of valuing intent over survival." But Ronan allowed himself a faint smile. "That's how you know when we mean it." The containment field hummed softly around him. Aerith stood there, unmoving. Victory was still within reach. All she had to do was remain silent. Instead, she took a slow breath, and somewhere deep within Velarith doctrine, something began to fracture. Aerith did not return to the council chambers. Instead, she walked. The corridors of the Velarith station were vast, silent, immaculate architecture designed to reflect inevitability, every surface curved with purpose, every light source calibrated for clarity rather than warmth. It was a place built by a civilization that believed uncertainty was a flaw to be engineered out of existence. Normally, Aerith found comfort in that. Tonight, it felt oppressive. She stopped before a sealed archway marked with sigils few Velarith were authorized to access. Her biometric signature opened it instantly. The door parted soundlessly, revealing a chamber older than the station itself. The archive of precedent. Here, outcomes were not debated, they were recorded. Aerith moved to the central console. With a precise gesture, she summoned a dormant data strand, one she had not accessed in decades. Project Null Meridian. The name alone tightened something in her chest. The projection unfolded slowly. Ancient treaties, first contact scenarios, species classifications, dozens of civilizations, cataloged not by culture or philosophy but by disposition. Adaptive, compliant, resistant, humanity's designation pulsed softly, volatile. Aerith exhaled through her nose. "They always get that wrong," she murmured. She expanded the file further. Hidden layers surfaced, redacted from public diplomatic doctrine, probabilistic collapse models, not of Velarith systems, of others. A pattern emerged. Species that resisted Velarith protective oversight did not collapse immediately. They survived longer than projections predicted, but something else happened. They changed. Their cultures hardened. Their alliances deepened. Their technological leaps became unpredictable, dangerous. Humans were not the first. They were simply the most recent. Aerith closed her eyes briefly. The truth she had buried for years pressed closer to the surface. Velarith dominance was not maintained by superiority alone. It was maintained by preventing variables like Ronan Hale from ever reaching positions of influence. Courage was contagious. Choice destabilized models. And humans were reckless enough to value both. She reopened the projection and isolated a specific scenario thread. Human refusal during diplomatic convergence. The probability spike was unmistakable. Velarith loss of long-term strategic advantage, 41%. Unacceptable. That was why Ronan had been brought here, not to negotiate, to be removed. Aerith's jaw tightened. She had told herself it was necessity, that individuals were expendable in service of civilization-scale stability. She had told herself that for centuries. Now the face of one human diplomat kept intruding on her certainty. If I remain silent, I win. The thought came automatically. If she allowed the tribunal to proceed, Ronan would die. Humanity would fracture under fear and confusion. Velarith oversight would be imposed gradually, efficiently, and without open resistance. Order preserved. Yet, she saw it now, the long-term cost. Humanity would survive. But it would never forgive, and worse, it would learn. Aerith terminated the projection with a sharp gesture. "No," she said softly to the empty chamber. "That path ends badly." The question was no longer whether to act. It was how much she was willing to lose. Ronan felt the change before he saw it. The containment field around him fluctuated just slightly, not enough to free him, enough to signal interference. Someone had touched the system. He opened his eyes. Aerith stood outside the chamber's transparent barrier, her posture rigid, her expression carefully neutral. But her eyes were no longer calculating outcomes. They were weighing consequences. "You should not be here," Ronan said calmly. "I know," Aerith replied. "You're not here to threaten me," he continued, "and not to reassure me. No, then you're here because something finally outweighed inevitability." Aerith's lips curved faintly. "Humans have an irritating way of naming things correctly," she said. She deactivated the barrier. The field dissolved. Ronan did not move. That surprised her. "You're free," she said. "For now," Ronan replied. "Which means the cost hasn't been paid yet." Aerith studied him, then nodded once. "Correct." She stepped inside the chamber. The door sealed behind her. "This is the part," she said quietly, "where I tell you what I was never meant to say." But Ronan's voice remained steady. "I'm listening." Aerith met his gaze. "Velorith intervention is not about saving your species," she said. "It is about preventing what your species becomes when left to choose." Silence fell between them. "You're afraid of us," Ronan said. "Yes," Aerith admitted. "Not of your weapons, of your willingness." She drew a slow breath. "If you proceed with your sacrifice," she said, "humanity will fracture, but it will also adapt, in ways my people cannot control." "And if you stop it?" Ronan asked. "Then my people will call me traitor," Aerith said, "and I will stand where you stand now." Ronan held her gaze. "So this is the moment," he said, "where one of us decides whether courage is allowed to exist." Aerith's internal response was immediate, sharp, and inconveniently warm. Her voice, however, remained cold. "There is one more move," she said. "Mine. And if I make it," Aerith continued, "I lose everything." Ronan didn't hesitate. "Then you finally understand the stakes." For the first time since she had met him, Aerith smiled openly, not as a strategist, not as a diplomat, but as someone who had just made a decision she could never undo. The council chamber had never felt this small. Ronan stood at its center, unrestrained now, though the absence of bindings offered no comfort. Around him, the Velarith High Council sat in a precise arc, 12 figures elevated above the floor, each draped in ceremonial armor darker than Aerith's, older, heavier with history. Aerith stood among them, not beside Ronan, apart. That alone told him everything. The chamber's central sigil flared, signaling formal proceedings. A low harmonic hum settled into the walls, the sound of authority aligning itself. "Ronan Hale," intoned the Speaker General, voice layered with artificial resonance. "You stand accused of diplomatic obstruction, strategic destabilization, and refusal of corrective oversight." Ronan lifted his chin. "I acknowledge the charges." A murmur rippled through the council. "You do not contest?" another councilor asked. "There's nothing to contest," Ronan replied. "I did exactly what you accuse me of." Aerith's gaze flickered to him. Just for a moment, the Speaker General turned slightly. "Strategist Aerith Kyles, you requested this session be accelerated. Explain." This was it. Ronan felt the moment stretch thin like glass under pressure. Aerith stepped forward. Her posture was immaculate. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady. "I request the Council suspend judgment," she said, "pending disclosure of suppressed precedent." The chamber reacted instantly. Sigils brightened. Councilors shifted. One rose halfway from their seat before settling back, armor clinking softly. "Suppressed precedent," the Speaker General repeated. "Clarify." Aerith did not look at Ronan when she spoke next. "Project Null Meridian," she said. Silence fell like a physical weight. Ronan felt it, not fear but recognition. He had struck something buried deep. "That program is classified beyond diplomatic authority," a councilor snapped. "Even for you." "It was," Aerith replied, "until its parameters began to fail." The Speaker General's eyes narrowed. "Proceed carefully." "I am," Aerith said. "That is why I am speaking now." She activated the central projection. Data blossomed into the chamber, species profiles, intervention timelines, outcome trajectories. Ronan recognized the pattern instantly. Not salvation, containment. "Velarith oversight has not preserved stability," Aerith continued. "It has delayed volatility while amplifying resentment. Species subjected to enforced guidance adapt. They do not submit." A councilor scoffed. "Conjecture." "No," Aerith said evenly. "Pattern." She shifted the projection. Humanity's curve pulsed at the center. "If this human is executed," Aerith said, "Earth's coalition fractures. Yes, but it also radicalizes. The long-term outcome probability of violent resistance increases by 40%. "And if oversight proceeds?" the Speaker General asked. "Resistance is delayed," Aerith replied, "not eliminated." A pause. Ronan felt something tighten in his chest. She was doing it. She was burning her position down piece by piece. "You were aware of this before," a counselor said sharply. Why reveal it now? Aerith finally turned toward Ronan. Because this human behaved in a way our models could not account for, she said. He chose loss without leverage, sacrifice without spectacle. She faced the council again. That behavior is not an anomaly, it is a trait. The Speaker General's voice dropped. You are arguing for restraint. I am arguing for honesty, Aerith replied, and for acknowledging that our fear of choice has become our greatest vulnerability. The chamber erupted, voices overlapped, accusations flew. The harmonic hum spiked, struggling to maintain order. Ronan stood motionless at the center, fully aware that he was no longer the one on trial. Enough, the Speaker General commanded. Silence returned, sharper than before. Strategist Aerith Kyles, the Speaker General said slowly, you are accused of treasonous disclosure and ideological deviation. Ronan's pulse jumped. Aerith inclined her head. I anticipated that. You have endangered Velarith's strategic supremacy. Yes, you have compromised this council's authority. Yes, and you have acted on emotional impulse. That one made her pause. No, Aerith said. I acted on delayed recognition. The Speaker General rose fully now. Your authority is revoked, effective immediately. A sigil flared above Aerith's position. Ronan took a step forward without thinking. Don't, Aerith said quietly without looking at him. The Speaker General continued. You will be detained pending judgment. Punishment will be exemplary. Execution. Ronan felt it land like a blow. And the human, a counselor asked. The Speaker General's gaze slid back to Ronan. He will be executed as scheduled, publicly. His sacrifice will serve its purpose. Aerith's jaw tightened. Ronan met her eyes. He understood now. This was the part where courage finished its work. He stepped forward. I accept, Ronan said clearly. Every gaze snapped to him. I accept full responsibility for these events, he continued. Release strategist Kyles. I will walk to my execution willingly. Aerith turned sharply. Ronan. This was always my line, he said quietly. You just chose to cross yours. The Speaker General studied him. You would trade your life for hers. Yes, without guarantee. Yes. A long pause, then a thin smile. So be it. Energy fields surged. Aerith was seized by force restraints, lifted slightly from the floor. Ronan was not. Instead, the central sigil shifted, reconfiguring. A public execution protocol. Aerith's composure cracked at last. Stop this, she said, voice sharp with something dangerously close to panic. You don't understand what you're doing. Ronan looked back at her. I understand exactly what I'm doing, he said. I'm proving you right. As he was escorted toward the chamber exit, the council rising around him like a wall of judgment, Ronan felt an unexpected calm settle in his chest. Humanity might never know his name, but they would feel the hesitation he left behind. And somewhere behind him, as the doors sealed shut, Aerith Kyles realized something terrifyingly clear. She had not saved him. Yet. The execution platform overlooked the station's central void. That, Ronan realized, was deliberate. No walls, no enclosure, just open space and gravity held at bay by precise force fields. Beyond the transparent barrier, stars burned cold and indifferent, distant witnesses to a judgment that would ripple farther than anyone in this chamber could calculate. Velarith executions were not hidden. They were lessons. Ronan walked forward under escort, unshackled by chains but surrounded by invisible constraints. Every step echoed softly against the polished surface of the platform. He kept his pace even, unhurried. If he was afraid, he would not give them the satisfaction of seeing it. Across the platform, elevated and restrained within a lattice of energy, Aerith Kyles was brought into view. The field around her hummed faintly, suppressing movement without pain. Her armor had been stripped of insignia. No strategist markings, no authority glyphs, just her. For the first time since they had met, Ronan saw her without the weight of institutional power wrapped around her shoulders. She met his eyes, and for once she did not hide what she felt. You shouldn't be here, she said, voice steady but strained. Ronan allowed himself a small smile. You already said that once. This is different, Aerith replied. This ends you. It was always going to end someone, Ronan said quietly. I just made it simple. Aerith closed her eyes for a brief moment. When she opened them again, something had changed. The cold strategist was still there. But beneath it, resolve sharpened into something dangerous. The Speaker General's voice resonated across the platform. Proceed. The execution apparatus activated. A vertical column of energy descended slowly from above, calibrating, measuring, preparing to disrupt neural coherence in a way that left no pain, no struggle, no mess. Clean, efficient, final. Ronan straightened his shoulders. This was the moment, the one no model could predict. If humanity was ever to be understood, it would be understood here. Before you proceed, Ronan said, his voice carrying clearly across the platform, I request permission to speak. The Speaker General hesitated. Aerith's gaze snapped toward him. No, she said sharply. Ronan didn't look at her. You already won, he continued calmly. Granting me words costs you nothing. A pause. Then indulgently speak, the Speaker General allowed. Ronan turned slowly, taking in the assembled counselors, the observers, the cold perfection of Velarith order. You believe I am an anomaly, he said, a flawed variable to be removed. He gestured subtly toward Aerith. You believe she is a deviation. Aerith struggled against the field, not physically but internally. Don't, she thought, don't do this. You are wrong, Ronan continued. We are not exceptions. We are indicators. The Speaker General's eyes narrowed. Of what? Of choice, Ronan said. Of the thing you fear because it cannot be controlled. He took a breath. You see chaos. We see responsibility. You see volatility. We see willingness to bear consequences personally rather than outsource them to systems. The execution column paused, recalibrating. Aerith's pulse spiked. Humanity does not survive because we are the strongest, Ronan said. We survive because when faced with extinction, someone eventually stands up and says, no, not like this. The Speaker General lifted one hand. Enough. The column resumed its descent. Ronan felt the energy shift around him. He turned his head toward Aerith at last. This is the part, he said gently, where you don't save me. Her composure shattered. No, Aerith said, voice cutting through the chamber. This is the part where you stop. The Speaker General turned sharply. You are in no position to. I invoke Clause 17 of Velarith Foundational Accord, Aerith said, her voice suddenly clear, precise, and lethal. The chamber froze. Even the execution column halted mid-descent. The Speaker General stared. That clause is ceremonial. It was, Aerith replied, until now. She met the Council's gaze without flinching. Clause 17 permits a bound strategist, under active judgment, to declare existential conflict of interest when evidence indicates systemic self-destruction. The Speaker General's eyes widened. You would dare. I am daring, Aerith said, and I am invoking it. The sigils around her flared violently. Energy restraints tightened, then fractured. Alarms erupted across the platform. Ronan stared. Aerith, stay where you are, she snapped, then softened. Please. She straightened within the failing field. This human's execution, she said loudly, will not preserve Velarith supremacy. It will destroy it. The Speaker General advanced. You have already lost. No, Aerith interrupted. I have already accepted the loss. She turned her head slightly, just enough to look at Ronan. You were right, she said. This is the moment courage is either allowed or erased. She faced the Council again. I choose to allow it. The execution column retracted abruptly. The platform shook. Ronan felt a surge of disbelief and something dangerously close to hope. The Speaker General's voice dropped to a snarl. You have condemned yourself. Aerith inclined her head. I know. The restraint surged back, stronger now, slamming her to her knees. But the execution sequence did not resume. Silence spread across the platform, heavy, unstable. Ronan stood at the center of it, alive. For now. and for the first time since he had stepped into Velarith space, he realized something extraordinary. Human courage had not just delayed the inevitable. It had forced the universe to pause. Silence did not mean mercy. Ronan understood that the moment the platform stabilized, Velarith systems did not pause out of compassion. They paused to recalculate. And recalculation, in a civilization built on inevitability, was often more dangerous than immediate judgment. The Speaker General rose slowly. "Strategist Aerith Kyles," they said, voice stripped of resonance now, bare and lethal. "You have invoked an obsolete clause to disrupt lawful execution. You have compromised council authority, violated containment protocol, and endangered strategic supremacy." Aerith remained on her knees, restrained by reinforced energy fields. Her posture was still straight, her gaze unwavering. "I acknowledge the charges," she said. "You will be judged," the Speaker General continued, "not as a diplomat but as a liability." The word echoed. Ronan's chest tightened. He took one step forward. "No," he said. Every eye in the chamber snapped to him. "You have no standing here," a counselor hissed. "I wasn't finished earlier," Ronan replied calmly. "You interrupted me with an execution beam." A ripple of irritation passed through the council. Aerith turned her head sharply. "Ronan, stop." "He didn't." "You claim she endangered your future," Ronan said, addressing the arc of Velarith authority. "But she did the opposite. She exposed the flaw in it." The Speaker General's eyes narrowed. "Your continued existence is provisional." "So is your certainty," Ronan replied. That landed harder than shouting ever could. "She invoked Clause 17, Ronan continued, "because your system is eating itself. You suppress variables until stagnation looks like stability." A counselor rose halfway from their seat. "You are describing chaos." "I'm describing life," Ronan said. "You just forgot the difference." Aerith struggled once against the restraints, not to escape, but to speak. "Ronan," she said, voice sharp with urgency, "this is not how you save me." He finally looked at her. His expression was steady, resolved. "This is exactly how," he said. He turned back to the council. "You fear what humanity becomes when allowed to choose," Ronan said. "So you control us, quietly, efficiently, until nothing unpredictable remains." He gestured toward Aerith. She saw the end of that path, and she stepped in front of it. The Speaker General's voice hardened. "And for that she will be erased." Aerith inhaled sharply. Ronan didn't hesitate. "Then erase me instead." The chamber froze. Even the background hum of the station seemed to falter. "You have already been granted clemency," the Speaker General said slowly. "Do not test it." "I'm not asking for clemency," Ronan replied. "I'm offering equivalence." A murmur spread. "Under Velarith legal doctrine," Ronan continued, "a foreign envoy may assume culpability for actions that occur as direct consequence of their provocation." Aerith's eyes widened. "Ronan, don't," she said. "This is my choice." "And this is mine," he replied without turning to her. "You taught me that." The Speaker General studied him intently. "You would trade your life for hers," they said. "Again." "Yes. Even now. Yes." A long silence followed. Then the Speaker General spoke words that cut deeper than any weapon. "Very well." The restraints around Aerith loosened, around Ronan. They formed. Invisible force locked his limbs, lifting him slightly from the platform. Aerith cried out, the sound sharp and raw, tearing through her composure. "No," she shouted. "You cannot. This was not the agreement." "There was no agreement," the Speaker General replied. "Only correction." Ronan met Aerith's gaze across the distance. "It's all right," he said softly. "You did what you were supposed to do." Actual tears, gathered at the edges of her eyes. Velarith did not cry, but Aerith did. "You arrogant, impossible human," she whispered. "You think this proves something." Ronan smiled faintly. "I know it does." The Speaker General raised a hand. "Prepare judgment." The chamber darkened slightly. Aerith's voice cut through the gathering force. "I rescind my invocation," she said. The Speaker General paused. "You cannot." I can, Aerith replied, by accepting full penalty. She straightened, pulling herself upright despite the weakening restraints. I accept execution. Ronan's breath caught. No, he said sharply, that's not. Aerith looked at him, really looked at him. Cold strategist, warm heart, everything finally visible. This began because you were willing to die for something you believed in, she said. I will not let it end without proving I understand that language. The Speaker General stared at her. You will both die, they said. Aerith's lips curved faintly. Then you will prove us right. That was when the chamber alarms changed tone. Not warning, notification. A counselor froze, eyes fixed on incoming data. Speaker General, they said slowly, external channels are activating. The Speaker General turned. Explain. The counselor swallowed. Human fleets, they said, not mobilizing. Broadcasting. Ronan's heart pounded. Aerith felt it instantly. Humanity had not fractured, it had answered. Across the stars, human signals filled the void. Not threats, not demands, declarations of choice, of witness, of refusal to look away. The Speaker General's certainty wavered just slightly. Aerith met Ronan's gaze one last time. A quiet, private smile passed between them. Whatever happened next, neither of them stood alone anymore. The council chamber did not erupt into chaos. That, more than anything, unsettled them. Velarith systems were built to absorb disruption through escalation, force answering force, authority answering defiance. What they were not designed for was witness, for an audience that did not beg, threaten, or attack but simply watched. Human signals continued to flood external channels, not weapons telemetry, not military formations, stories, personal records, testimonies, archived transmissions of past sacrifices, past refusals, past moments when humans had chosen loss over surrender. Millions of quiet declarations, layered atop one another, impossible to silence without confirming their meaning. The Speaker General stood motionless. For the first time in recorded Velarith history, inevitability hesitated. This is irrelevant, they said at last, but the words lacked conviction. Your species postures sentimentally. It changes nothing. Ronan, restrained at the center of the chamber, lifted his head. It changes everything, he said calmly. You just don't know how to model it. Aerith stood beside him now, no longer restrained but no longer protected. Just a figure stripped of rank, authority, and illusion. Velarith dominance was never about strength, she said quietly. It was about controlling the story of the future. She looked around the chamber. You no longer control it. A counselor spoke, voice unsteady. If we execute them now. You create martyrs, Aerith replied. And humans are very good at carrying the dead forward. Silence settled again. Not heavy. Reflective. The Speaker General turned slowly, gaze moving from Aerith to Ronan, then to the cascading human transmissions still unfolding across the chamber's projection field. You leave us no clean outcome, they said. Ronan allowed himself a faint smile. That's usually how choice works. Another pause, then. Release the human envoy, the Speaker General said. The restraints around Ronan dissolved. Aerith's breath caught. And you, the Speaker General continued, turning to her, will remain under provisional detention, judgment deferred. Deferred, not forgiven, not condemned. The chamber reacted instantly, protocols adjusting, authority reshaping itself around uncertainty. Ronan stepped forward without thinking, stopping just short of Aerith. She met his gaze. For a moment, neither spoke. You're alive, she said softly. So are you, Ronan replied. That feels sufficient. Against her will, a small, genuine smile surfaced. Warm, human in its expression despite everything she was. You are infuriating, she said. Do you know that? I've been told. They stood there together as the council retreated, not in defeat but in recalculation. The war had not ended, but it had been delayed. And delay, Ronan knew, was sometimes all humanity needed. Later, much later, Ronan stood at the observation viewport, watching distant stars drift past the station's slow rotation. The universe looked unchanged. He knew better now. Aerith joined him, her steps quiet. "They will not forget this," she said. "Neither of our peoples." "I wouldn't want them to," Ronan replied. She folded her hands behind her back, posture familiar, but something in her had shifted permanently. "You understand," she said, "that this has only begun." "Yes, and that my future is uncertain." Ronan turned toward her. "Then it matches humanity's," he said. "We've always lived there." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I once believed inevitability was the highest form of order," she said. "Now I wonder if courage is." Ronan looked back out at the stars. "Careful," he said lightly. "That kind of thinking gets people in trouble." Aerith's eyes gleamed with quiet amusement. "Then perhaps," she said, "we will be troublesome together." The station lights dimmed slightly as new protocols took hold. Negotiations would resume. Alliances would strain. Choices would be demanded. Nothing was resolved. But something had been opened. And somewhere between fear and hope, between strategy and sacrifice, two civilizations had learned that the future was no longer guaranteed, only possible. And that, Ronan